Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone Retro Review. Today it is Season 1, Episode 23, A World of Difference, written by Richard Matheson and starring Howard Duff as Mr. Arthur Curtis and as Gerald Reagan. And you'll see why he's two different people in a minute. So once again, as with Richard Matheson's first episode, The Last Flight, this episode does a lot of things really well, and you could really see that Matheson was ahead of his time in a lot of ways with the concepts that he brought forth in this show. So this episode basically is about a man named Mr. Curtis, and he starts out in his office and everything just seems normal. He's talking to his secretary. All of a sudden we hear a man saying cut, and we find out that he's actually acting in a film. Or is he? More on that in a minute. So this episode does a really good job of keeping the viewer not sure what's happening themselves all the way to the end. What we basically get is back and forth between this man insisting that he's Arthur Curtis and other people telling him he's Gerald Reagan. So what basically happens is he seems very confused. He calls his own number. They tell him no number like this exists, leading us to believe that he really is Gerald Reagan. And he runs into a woman, another just crazy woman character on this show. One thing about these early episodes, I think they could have done a better job of writing some of these characters. These female characters are very one-dimensional. You can tell she just wants money from him. That's all she talks about throughout the episode. So they're driving around, and him and the lady, and he just keeps insisting that he's Arthur Curtis. She tells him to knock it off, that he's really Gerald Reagan. And we just kind of go back and forward with this throughout the whole episode. They go to his so-called home. He's still acting very confused. He meets, I think the man is his agent. They don't really specifically say, but I'll just call him the agent. And this man's also telling him he's Gerald Reagan. And he's just not buying it for anything. And the woman just tells him he better give her the money that she's owed, and this just pretty much keeps going on. He says he'll prove that he's Arthur Curtis. He calls the company where he works for, and again he's told it doesn't exist. We're as an audience though still aren't 100% sure what's going on, but it really is starting to look like he's Gerald Reagan, because every time he calls and asks information they tell him it's not right. So basically the agent guy shows him the script of the movie he's working on, where he stars as Arthur Curtis, and he tries to explain to him that, that he's really Gerald Reagan, and all the stress that he's under is causing him to make himself think he's this other character in order to relieve some of the stress, and that maybe he needs some help and he should seek help. And then he tells him, you don't have to worry, finish the production because they're shutting it down. So, he goes crazy at this point, Arthur Gerald, whatever you want to call him, and he hurries back to the studio where they are taking everything away. Everything, all the props, what he claims is his real office, it's all going away. So at this point, we're pretty sure that he's really Gerald Reagan and that he's invented all this. However, then we get the Twilight Zone twist, and while he's sitting there wondering what to do next, we are still in his office, and the wife that he insists that he has, Marion, comes and tells him that they're going on a trip. His secretary is also there, and now she's calling him Mr. Curtis, like at the beginning of what was supposed to be the movie. So now we're thinking once again that he might be Arthur Curtis. If this all sounds a bit confusing, you really just need to watch the episode. It's the kind of episode you need to watch and interpret for yourself, because then what happens is the agent comes back and asks, have you seen Gerald? And they tell him he was here, but he's gone. While over the closing narration, we hear Rod Serling, and we see him taking off with his wife. So it is like he has become Arthur Curtis. Now, whether he was always Arthur Curtis, or whether he actually became Arthur Curtis in his own mind, whether he literally transformed into Arthur Curtis, it's really up to your interpretation. That's how I take it anyway. And that's one of the things I really like about this episode is I don't believe there's a clear-cut answer. You're never really given. You're given like little things to lean you each way, but in the end, it really appears that he's become Arthur Curtis, whether it's literally or in his mind. I believe that's up for interpretation. And one thing I've noticed is that while Rod Serling writes excellent character-driven episodes, a lot of times with a moral behind them, Richard Matheson really focuses a lot on the plotting. And just as he did in The Last Flight, he comes up with a very complex and in some ways ahead of its time plot here. It's compelling throughout. There are a couple little complaints. Once again, the female written character is very one-dimensional. Maybe she had to be for this script, but it just feels like more could be done with some of these characters. And also, it could be considered a negative the way the episode jumps around so much. I considered it to be more times than not a positive, but it might bother some viewers, not to their satisfaction, the way we continue to cut back and forth the way we do. But overall, I do think this is another very solid Twilight Zone episode, as most of Season 1 really is, and Richard Matheson did a great job. The acting by Howard Duff is good, and I haven't talked a lot about it, but I also have to mention that the technicals were well done in this episode. The cutting, the editing, and direction were very good, the way it went pretty seamlessly between the two different worlds, if I'll call them worlds if you want to call them that. So an excellent job there too. So I give A World of Difference a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 for A World of Difference. Thanks for watching.